There's a lie that goes around in self-help that I've recently realized is actually extremely dangerous. Now, self-help often espouses the idea that having a growth mindset and persevering no matter what happens is going to get you to success. And I myself have spoken about the importance of having a growth mindset ad nauseum on this channel. But while it's extremely important, it's also really important to clarify that that is only one of multiple elements to success. And recently I've watched somebody who's kind of like a friend of a friend self-immolate, basically set their life on fire because of the lie that all you need in order to succeed is to just keep trying. So in this video, I'd like to share what I personally think is the formula for success and how to avoid ruining your life by only focusing on one of the multiple elements of that formula, all the while hopefully providing some concrete examples. Now, when we think about what it takes to succeed, obviously human behavior and success outcomes are impossible to predict, but I think that there is a formula that can get pretty close. And that is having an interest that's compatible with your natural capabilities, persevering, having that growth mindset, and experimentation, working with different things through trial and error. If you have those three elements, if you have an interest that you're naturally quite good at, and you put in a lot of work into it, and you experiment with ways to optimize how you're doing at that thing, there's a pretty good chance you're going to be successful at it. Now, of course, we're just talking about internal factors here. I'm not talking about external factors like socioeconomic resources or luck or having wrong place, wrong time. Those things definitely do factor in and inhibit or help a person's ability to succeed. But right now I'm really just talking about internal factors. So breaking down each component, starting with having a compatible interest, an interest that's compatible with your natural capabilities. I don't believe in fixed trait mindsets. I don't think there's much of a benefit in telling yourself, this is what I'm good at and this is what I'm bad at. I don't think inborn talent matters as much as the amount of effort that you put into something. And there is a body of literature that supports that notion. But there are certain interests that come easier to us than others that might be more compatible with our natural capabilities. Some come with a lot more ease than others. Others come with a lot more effort on our part. For example, can a person who is short in stature get really good at basketball? Yes, I'm sure they can. I'm sure if they put in a lot of work, they can surpass even their tall peers. But it might be a lot more work than somebody who's naturally tall. Or to give you another example, when I was in middle school, I really wanted to get into singing, and I was not naturally good at singing. When I told this to my parents, they were like, Anna, you're not good at singing. Don't do this. So to prove them wrong, I joined choir. And guess what? By the end of the year, my parents came back to me and they said, you know what, actually, we were wrong. Yeah, you're right. You put in the work and now you're actually pretty decent at it. But contrast that with writing, for instance, which has always come naturally to me, which I've been told my whole life that I'm good at. It would be so much harder if instead of trying to be a writer now, I were trying to be a singer. Could I maybe get good at it? Could I maybe succeed? It's possible. But why would I try to do something that comes so much harder to me? When focusing on something that comes easily is not only more enjoyable, but it allows me to succeed at that thing much more rapidly. So that is one element of the formula for success that I think is really important, is you need to choose what you want to succeed at very carefully in a way that maximizes your ease, in a way that's the path of least resistance, that isn't going to be so hard for you. The second component is indeed persevering, continuing, keeping up this growth mindset of, I'm going to keep trying again and again and again until I get it. That means investing a lot of time and effort into practicing whatever it is you're practicing, into growing, into improving yourself. Why do you think I spend every night reading after dinner? In part, yes, because it's enjoyable, but mostly because it makes me a better writer. My goal in life is to support myself 100% from my writing, so you better bet that I'm going to spend every waking moment that I can making that dream happen. You better bet that all throughout the workday, I'm focused on my writing, on editing, on getting feedback, on taking courses about this, on participating in workshops, and then in my free time, continuing to develop my writing by reading authors who I admire. That is a really important component. You do need to put in the work. You need to continue improving and to really put in hours in order to succeed at something, and to persist no matter what, because what differentiates a successful person from a not so successful person is, in most cases, people give up. You'll notice a lot of the most successful people in life, they talk about how they were beat down 1,000 times by life, but they just kept getting right back up. And eventually, that 1,000th time that they got back up, they actually made it. So having that growth mindset is extremely important. But then there's also a third element to success, which is experimentation. The definition of insanity is to continue doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different outcome. I think it was Albert Einstein that said that. Having a growth mindset does not mean just continuing to do the same thing over and over when it's been shown to not work. No matter how much you persevere, you are never going to make it if the thing that you keep trying to do more of doesn't work for you, has shown time and time again that it's not effective. So a huge component of success is regularly checking in with yourself about what's working, what's not working. That's why in my productivity planner, Get It Done, I encourage people to reflect on that, not just quarter after quarter, not just year after year, but also every month. Really streamlining your approach so that you're not wasting time doing things that aren't working for you, or missing opportunities to do things that do work, that bring in more bang for your buck. For example, about once a year, I brainstorm how to level up this channel. Like last time that I brainstormed that, I said, I want to have a better camera. I want to put like a slightly grainy filter on it. There are a couple things that I want to tinker with in my intro just to make it a little bit snappier. I want to make more videos about this, fewer about that, yada, yada, yada. Same with my writing. If I were to just continue writing in the way that comes naturally to me, my writing would not improve much. You need to actually incorporate people's feedback, hear from beta readers and editors on what they think you need to improve, and experiment with it. Do a little trial and error and see, when I tried this slightly different thing, does that help? But you can't believe the self-help lie that all you need is perseverance. All you need is practice. It doesn't matter if you're naturally good at it, and it doesn't matter if you're not experimenting with it at all. As long as you have a growth mindset, you're going to succeed. Now, if you want a really simple boost that will increase your chances of becoming successful, you might really enjoy the sponsor of today's video, Blinkist. Blinkist gives actionable summaries of over 6,500 nonfiction books that you can read in under 15 minutes. And they also have podcasts on there. So you can either read them or listen to them, depending on what you prefer. I prefer to see it in written form. Others prefer audio form. Blinkist has 31 million users. So the numbers speak for themselves. It's a really great way to broaden your horizons, to learn more, to develop yourself. Reading summaries of nonfiction books like this can be a really good method of micro-learning, just taking a few minutes out of your day instead of doom scrolling or wasting time or whatever else you struggle with in your day-to-day routine, and instead making it productive, instead growing from it. So for example, we have here Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. You can click on it and either click read or play, depending on what you prefer. Like I said, I prefer to read. And it starts with an introduction, and then it breaks it down based on chapters. So there are 11 chapters each that you can read in like 1 to 5 minutes. And then at the end, there's also a final summary to help you sort of retain the information. Really valuable resource. So if you want to get 40% off Blinkist annual premium and a 7-day free trial, click my link below or scan the QR code. Thank you so much to Blinkist. So I mentioned in the beginning of this video that there was like a real life person that inspired this video. And just so you guys don't worry, this is not somebody that actually knows who I am. I know who this person is because friends of friends are talking about him, but this person isn't going to like see this video and think it's about them because they don't know me. But I recently saw somebody who was trying to get good at something that was incompatible with his inborn talents, keeps doing more of what's not working for him. So more specifically, this is somebody who is like, what they call like a SoundCloud rapper. So like an indie rapper trying to get discovered. And he's just getting a lot of negative feedback. Like, hey man, this is not for you. Like, I don't think you're good at this. This doesn't sound as good as you think it does. Really consistently negative feedback. And so the problem in a situation like this is that a person is putting in the work. They're putting in the perseverance element of success, but completely neglecting the other two elements of success, completely neglecting that it should ideally be something that they are naturally pretty good at, and that they need to pivot if something is not working for them. Now, why would somebody want to get really good at something that they're not really naturally talented at? We live in an age where there are a lot of people trying to get famous, It's not about making music or making content or any of that. That's not the real reason. The real reason is that they're chasing fame. And so they're trying to take an avenue of what they think is going to bring them fame that is not aligned with their natural capabilities. And in the case of this person, it's literally, like I said, set his life on fire. This person has not held down a job since graduating college. is trying very hard to make a living as a rapper, to the point where you can see that it's kind of lost him the respect of everyone in his circle. I mean, you can see when something has like 8 likes and 1,000 sends, you can kind of assume that a lot of those people are making fun of him. If you're trying to get good at something that feels really hard to you, I think it's worth examining, why are you doing that in the first place? Why are you not choosing something that's more aligned with your talents? Because the truth is, the things that we enjoy doing are typically the things that come pretty naturally to us. We feel good about ourselves, we feel competent, we gain self-esteem when we do something that we're good at. Now, of course, there is a balance here. When something comes too easily and there's no challenge at all, there's no tension, that's not very fun either. It's good to have a little bit of a balance between challenge and ease. And there are also situations where it's quite admirable to set out to do something that's really hard for you. Like, for instance, people who decide to be in the Paralympics. It's much harder to take part in those athletic feats when you have a physical disability versus when you don't. And that is admirable. But generally speaking, it's not very fun for people to do things that they're not good at just for the sake of it, just to prove to themselves that they can. So that's kind of what I mean here. If you're doing something that comes really hard for you, presumably it's not very fun for you, and presumably you have some sort of extrinsic motivation that's driving it rather than the enjoyment of the process itself. Usually it comes down to people chasing extrinsic rewards. Extrinsic meaning coming from outside of you. You're not trying to feel accomplished because you really love this thing, or you're not trying to be competent because of your own integrity. You're doing things for fame, for social acceptance, for validation, for money. Maybe you want to make your parents proud and you think this is the only way, or you want to get really rich and you think this is an easy way to do it, or you want the validation that you never got growing up. But chasing extrinsic rewards will not help you in the long run. You know, as an example, when I was younger, I used to look at my friends who were really into tech, who like had an affinity to tech and got tech jobs, and I would envy them because I was like, man, you're so lucky that you like to do something that pays so well and like straight out of college. Can you imagine though if I had tried to go into tech in order to get paid well? Now, a couple years later, we are seeing how replaceable tech companies see their employees, and we're seeing that a huge amount of people are being laid off work. How ridiculous it would have been for me to try to go into something that's not even aligned with my natural skill set. And after a couple of years, realized that the extrinsic reward I was expecting was not even promised, was not even going to be there long term. You have to choose your life path based on intrinsic rewards, because extrinsic ones will always fluctuate. The internal ones are the ones that are going to stand the test of time. If you're doing something for money or for validation, don't, because that's going to change. And part of how quickly you can become successful is how efficient you can be with your time. If you're doing something that takes you a long time to master, you're automatically going to be behind in the race to success because you're trying to do something that comes to you a lot harder. What about experimentation? How does that actually look when I say you need to experiment with things in order to get successful? Experimentation is basically trying something new and seeing if it works, seeing if it gets you closer to your goal. You know, like I created a TikTok last fall, and I only created it because TikTok actually reached out to me. I was never going to create a TikTok. And once I did create an account, I realized that it's actually really hard to go viral on there. You know, I thought that it was easy to go viral on there. I had this image in my mind of TikTok as like the place where everyone can rack up views really easily. And I quickly learned that's not the case. So very regularly, I tinker with it. I think about different types of content to make and I pay attention. Does this garner views? Does this garner views? And finally, I found something that does seem to be working a little bit. I found that if I really focus down my niche, I make my grid kind of consistent. I make it kind of aesthetically cohesive, that the algorithm likes that sort of consistency because it knows exactly what box to put you in. It didn't really like the variety that I was giving it before. But there comes a point at which you just need to zoom out. You're just getting too bogged down in the details, and it's almost like you can't see the forest for the trees. Or you think, oh, I'm going to change the lighting on my videos, or I'm going to change the music on my videos, or I'm going to try to make this kind of content in this instead of that type of content. When really, if you've tried everything, you've experimented with every single variable and nothing is working for you, there comes a point at which the experiment needs to be, let me try a different field. Let me try tinkering with something else. Because this, what I'm doing currently, clearly does not seem to be working. Going back to that person that I was talking about, I see this person tinkering with different kinds of marketing schemes. This video hasn't helped me get discovered, or this type of content doesn't get me a lot of views. Let me try something else. When really, at that point, what should be reassessed is the entire idea of being a rapper. Or something a little bit less extreme that would still completely start from scratch would be turning into a parody rapper, because that would actually come really easily to this person. He'd be having fun while doing it. People would still be sharing his stuff, but instead of laughing at him, they'd be laughing with him, because they would feel like he has the self-awareness to recognize, I'm not good at this. What's his name? I think like Lil Dicky is like a parody rapper. But that would require a huge overhaul of everything he's been trying. That would require going from being an aspiring rapper to being an aspiring parody rapper. The issue is that people think too small. They think about like tiny details that they think are going to make them big, when what they should be thinking is much more big picture. But experimenting in part requires self-awareness on people's parts, an understanding of your own strengths and weaknesses, of how you're perceived by other people, and actually soliciting their feedback and then incorporating it so that you can improve. And that's why some people don't try experimenting, because they don't have that self-awareness. They put the words on paper and they say, oh my God, this sounds amazing. And then they don't edit it and they don't try to improve it. They say, oh, it sounds amazing the way that it is right now. And when they get that negative feedback, they assume that it's all just haters, that it's all just people being envious. That's not going to make anyone successful. It's not about quantity over quality. It's not just about perseverance. It's also about experimenting. It's also about trying different things if the same thing is not producing outcomes for you. And yeah, part of experimentation is realizing when something is just not for you, acknowledging when you've tried everything and your energy would be better spent on something else. I know this is like not a very happy topic, but I think it's really important to talk about, because I've certainly promoted a growth mindset on this channel, and I've certainly promoted the idea that you need to persevere if something's not working. But while I think that's important, it also needs to be balanced with the other two elements I mentioned, with doing something that doesn't come so hard to you and experimenting when something's not working. Tinkering with it, trying trial and error so that you're not just doing the same thing over and over again without it producing results. Hope this video made sense. Don't forget to check out Blinkist down below, and I'll see you soon.